Hello. So today is Thursday. I was meant to be doing a herbal bitters workshop on Saturday, and I thought I would just kind of do a video instead of the workshop so that people can have access to the information and the kind of practical method that I was going to do in person. So if any of you know me in real life, you'll know that I love bitters, and it's one of the first kind of herbal preparations that I became really interested in making, and that I've been making for a few years now. And I love doing it. I love what it does for me and for other people that I share it with, and yeah, I feel weirdly kind of passionate about bitters. So, which, yeah, if you know me, you probably have heard me like raving about them. But so I'm gonna speak for a little bit about, the bitter taste. This workshop, it's meant to be a kind of fusion of the Ayurvedic perspective and the Western herbal medicine perspective. So there'll be a little bit of the kind of Ayurvedic language, but also some of the more Western medical language in here. And then I will, it'll probably be split into two 10-minute videos, hopefully. And in the second video, I'll take you through making your own apple cider vinegar bitters. All right, so beginning with the taste. So bitter is one of the 6 tastes. In Ayurveda, there are 6 tastes called the sad rasa, sad meaning 6, and rasa meaning taste. So I made this table to kind of explain that a little bit further. I hope this is the right way around. But what you can see there is that each of the tastes, sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent, is made up of 2 elements. And if you've studied anything about Ayurvedic medicine, you'll know that the elements are kind of the foundation of everything. And even with taste, so the tastes themselves are made up of the different elements. And today we're going to be talking about the bitter taste. The bitter taste is made up of air and ether, or air and space, which are the 2 most subtle elements, the 2 most immaterial or least heavy elements. So that becomes important when we look at what role the bitter taste has to play in the body and the mind, in the kind of elemental balance of the body. When we introduce the bitter taste, what purpose does it have, and what happens when we don't have it in our diet? So each taste, then we're going to move on. This is the tongue. I've drawn this diagram. I hope you can understand it. This is a diagram of the tongue. So on one side, on this side, you can see the different regions of the tongue, the connection of those regions to the different organs of the body. And on this side, you can see the regions of the body that perceive taste. So the tastes, the 6 tastes, are perceived by specialized regions of taste buds on the tongue. And as you can see, for example, the salty flavor or taste is felt right at the back of the tongue. So this is the throat. This is the tip of the tongue. The tip of the tongue is where the sweet taste is perceived. On either side at the front you have sour, and we can see that they correspond. So the regions of taste perceival, I don't think that's a word, but they correspond to the different organs in the body, and they are directly connected. So the sour taste is linked to the lungs, the salty taste is linked to the kidneys, and it explains, the reactions that we have when we eat those different flavors of food. For example, when we eat pungent food, which you can see is right here in the middle of the tongue. Oh, wait, no, it's this one. I can't see, it's all backwards on my screen. So pungent, it corresponds to the stomach and the heart. And when we eat pungent foods, and I'm thinking of foods like garlic and onions that are kind of pungent and heating, we have a physical reaction almost immediately in the stomach of that sort of stimulation of the kind of digestive enzymes in the stomach, that growling of the stomach, but also the heart rate increases when you eat pungent foods, and that's why a lot of meditators or yogis avoid the pungent foods like garlic and onions in the sattvic diet, that's what it's called, so that they can kind of remain more calm and spiritual and all that. And today we're talking about bitter. So bitter, kind of the bitter taste is perceived by these regions, probably across the middle to the middle back of the tongue. And you can see that they correspond to three main organs. So the spleen, the pancreas, and the liver. The receptors in the bitter region, or the bitter perceiving region of the tongue, are called T2R. I always call them T24, but that's wrong. T2R receptors. And they're specialized receptors connected to the vagus nerve, which connects itself to the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord. And when the bitter perceiving regions of the tongue are stimulated, this sends a message through the vagus nerve up to the central nervous system and then to these organs, so to the spleen, to the liver, to the pancreas. And what it does in those sites is that it stimulates the release of digestive enzymes. So from a kind of Western perspective, we're always told the bitter taste stimulates the gallbladder, which is connected to the liver, to release bile, which is one of the most important, it's not an enzyme, but it's one of the digestive juices that emulsifies fats. So stimulates the liver, the gallbladder, as well as the pancreas, which secretes the majority of the digestive enzymes, and also the spleen, which has a big role to play in the purification of blood. So, if you want to have a closer look, I'll just leave that there and you can pause the screen and get a little bit more sense of that. But now I'm just going to talk more about the taste. So as I've said, that each taste has its own, elements affiliated with it, its own organs affiliated with it. And so it's important in Ayurvedic medicine to have a balance of elements in the body and to kind of be in harmony also with a natural balance, your own constitution. So it's going to be different for everyone. But usually in traditional diets, all of the tastes were included in the diet, in the West as well as the East. So in India and other Eastern cultures, I think I'm aware that they still have more of a kind of range of tastes and more of a range of flavors in their meals. But in the West, unfortunately, because the bitter taste is not pleasant per se, it's been largely kind of abandoned in Western cuisine, and we really favour these sweet and salty flavours, which are more pleasing to the taste, and I can certainly identify with that. But that has its own problems, because the sweet and salty flavours, if we look back to the table, it's really, those earth, water and fire, elements that are getting, a lot of the main kind of, if all of our fuel is coming from those, then we have this like lack of the air and ether. And the overconsumption of those sweet flavors is known to cause, in the Ayurvedic kind of philosophy and medicine, weight gain, but also things like underactive thyroid and cold congestion, because the sweet flavor has a sort of cooling effect. The overconsumption of the salty flavors, and if we remember that it's connected to the kidneys on the regions of the tongue, it causes a weakening of the kidney and also water retention to eat too much of that salty flavour. We're favouring the sweet and the salty taste in the Western diet. So what are we missing out on? We've stopped eating bitters in our diet, really. So what are we missing out on? And I think this statement pretty much sums it up. This is a reading from the Charaka Samhita, which is an Ayurvedic textbook that was written between 100 BC and 200 AD. So it's very old, it's about 2,000 years old. The bitter taste, though it does not taste good in itself, restores the sense of taste itself. It is detoxifying, antibacterial, germicidal, and kills worms. It relieves fainting, burning sensations, itch, inflammatory skin conditions, and thirst. The bitter taste causes tightening of the muscles and skin, toning, in kind of a modern, vocabulary. It is antipyretic, febrifuge. It enkindles the digestive fire, Agni, promotes digestion of toxins, purifies lactation, and helps to scrape, or cleanse, we would say now in the modern vocabulary, to scrape away fat and remove toxic accumulations in the fat, marrow, lymph, sweat, urine, and excrement. It reduces pitta and kapha dosha. Its qualities are dry, cold, and light. So that's a lot of stuff that we're missing out on. And especially this kind of, it has this cooling quality which is so useful in all these inflammatory disorders that we have. And also the main thing that I use it for is this, when it talks about enkindling or stimulating the digestive fire. And there is this chronic weak agony in our society because of overeating, because eating at the wrong times, eating the wrong things for your personal constitution, all that stuff. So it's really a useful thing to introduce into your diet. Now I'm going to add some kind of more modern Western things. Actually, there's one more thing from the Charaka Samhita. It's the bitter taste is antibacterial, as we've mentioned already, as well as antiviral, hence why most antibiotics have a bitter taste. Psychologically, the bitter taste is said to remove attachment to the worldly possessions and desires. It enhances self-reflection and awareness, which, if you think about it, makes sense, because when we looked at this table, the bitter taste is made up of the two least heavy elements, the farthest away from the earth element, which is the heaviest. And so when you're taking that into your body, you're kind of removing yourself from that physical attachment, which, if you have too much of that, then it's not really good for us. So now that I'm moving into a kind of Western medical lens, there's a really strong tradition of using bitters in modern Western medical herbalism, especially in North America. That's where I found out about this. The bitter taste is said to stimulate the liver and the gallbladder to release bile, as I said before. And the bile is a vital digestive juice that emulsifies fats. Without it, we can't emulsify the fat, and that means to break up the fat, the lipid molecules, so that they can be assimilated. And so many diseases of modern times are to do with that kind of lack of kind of the unctuous, oily, fat, basically, that we need, dry skin, eczema, psoriasis, all that stuff. They are said to relieve heartburn, indigestion, intestinal gas. Taking them before eating is said to ignite the digestive fire. And there's a few kind of formulations out there. The Swedish bitters is one of the most famous ones, and it's made from a blend of more than 10 bitter herbs in grain alcohol. However, I've experimented with that, and I feel that using apple cider vinegar is preferable for me.